Hi, I'm Rick Rheins, the rabbi at Temple Sinai here in Denver, and want to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. This is a very special Shabbat. It's Shabbat Yitro, the Shabbat on which we will read in the book of Exodus chapters 18, 19, and 20. Now that specifically includes the Ten Commandments, which is read in a very wonderful way when we can be in the synagogue, because we'll bring out the Sefer Torah. This is chapter 20 of the book of Exodus, and we'll read the Ten Commandments. And the tradition is when we're reading it, everyone will rise so that it's like recreating the experience at Mount Sinai, reading the Ten Commandments, everyone standing as if they're all experiencing this revelation. Which gets us to the thing I want to talk about, because what was it that the children of Israel experienced at Mount Sinai so many years ago that we're trying to replicate in standing as we hear the Ten Commandments read in our synagogues? They are experiencing some revelation from God, but what exactly did that mean? The rabbis in the Talmud and the Midrash point out that it was a little bit too hard for all of the people to experience everything, even though God had hoped that all the children of Israel, it says, Ro'im et hakalot, you have seen what I am saying. You have seen the voices, literally. How do you see voices? They perceived something, right? But the rabbis struggled with that. Were they all able to perceive all of the voices? Because it read in this week's portion that the children of Israel then said to Moses, Moses, you be the intermediary. You receive this revelation. It's a little bit too overwhelming for us. And yet the Midrashim also share that each person perceived God according to his or her own strength. From scholars all the way down to children, each person perceived something. So then we get to the question, what did they perceive? And what can we perceive? So in the Midrash, it says, well, note that in the Ten Commandments, only the first two are written in the first person, i.e. God speaking as I, literally the first word of the Ten Commandments, Anochi Hashem, I am the Lord. So the first commandment is spoken in that first person. The second commandment, and you shall have no other gods al panai, next to me, as opposed to me. There are no other gods. So those two commandments, the first and the second, were recited in the first person. Everything else, God is referred to in the third person. So the sages notice that shift from first to third. There's a little distance now. I'm not speaking one to one, but from a third person perspective. And they said, perhaps the children of Israel only heard the first two commandments. And then the Midrash says, well, even that would have been overwhelming. Imagine seeing the voices. Ro'im et hakolot, it says. This overwhelming experience of God's presence was have been too much. So they proposed that perhaps all of the children of Israel really perceived was Anochi, God saying, I am. And according to the modern philosopher Martin Buber, alav shalom, said that's all that was necessary. Once the children of Israel understood that God was, that there is a presence of the divine in our world, everything else is commentary. And yet the sages still wrestled with it. Could they have even perceived God saying, Anochi? And what would that have been like for us to actually hear words from God? And so one proposal is that they didn't hear God say Anochi, but rather just the first letter of Anochi, which is the letter Aleph. Aleph has no sound. It has no sound, but it has eternal and has meaning that expands beyond what we can conceive. In what way? Look at the Aleph. It's a Yud up, a Yud down, and in between a Vav. A Yud up, a Yud down, and in between a Vav. A Yud in Gematria has the mathematical equivalence of 10. And so 10 plus 10 and Vav is 6 is 26. The sages pointed out that Yud He Vav He, the name that we give, that we have understood is God's name, and what we pronounce as Adonai, Yud He Vav He also has a gematria of 26. That means then that the Aleph, though it has no sound, is a reflection of God. All of the possibilities, all the potentials of life, as God had said in a few portions earlier, Ehyeh asher ehyeh. I am what I am. I will be what I will be. I am what I will be. All encompassed in that one expression. I am the God who brings all into being. I am the God who is of all being. And you can hear that in the silence, the sound of silence, the sound of that which connects all to one, and all is of that one. So there's a lovely little take on that, that if you look at a person's face, that an eye looks a little bit like a yud, another eye, the other yud, and the nose being the vav. So yud, vav, that's the aleph. Look at someone's face and say, that person has on their face the aleph that represents God. So when we say that a person is b'tselem Elohim, that a person is in the image of God, that means each person that we look at, whatever their color, whatever their gender, whatever their faith, whatever their nationality, they're a reflection of God. That's our challenge now in this time of reading the Ten Commandments and re-experiencing the revelation. It's not to take upon ourselves a dogma that pits one versus the other, but rather in seeing the other and seeing all one, looking at each person as a reflection of that which is one, each person that reflects God. Now that's the revelation from the Ten Commandments, the revelations of our people, that we look at each other and realize we're a part of something sacred. We can elevate our lives to that which is sacred, that which is loving, that which is creative, that which is filled with potential. Now, of course, there are those who will scheme against that, who want to be cynical, who want to denigrate all that they see, denigrate anyone who's not exactly like them. The Torah said, no, look at each person. B'tselem Elohim bara oto. God has made each person in the image of God. We can see it if we look and listen for the aleph on each person's face. Embrace them, love each other with a sense of goodness. Shabbat shalom.